Hey, I'm Seth.
And I'm Cheryl.
This is Cat with Monocle.
Today we're talking about Transformers 1, which is the untold origin story of Optimus Prime and Megatron. Afore we get into it, Seth, do you want to talk about your first impression ratings before we talk about the details?
Yeah, after coming out of the theater, I was actually quite pleased with it. So right now I give it a 4.0.
That's great. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I haven't seen the other Transformers movies to have any point of comparison, but I don't think it mattered because, of course, this is an origin story. So I am wavering between a 4.25 and a 4.5.
Wow. And I know when we talked about this film a little bit, you didn't have any knowledge about Transformers or anything.
I still don't.
No. And that's okay. When going in this film, it was the untold story about Optimus Prime and Megatron, two of the biggest characters in the Transformers series. Now,
these ones are like enemies. The protagonist and the antagonist for the entire series. You have a little bit more knowledge than I do, so I might ask some questions throughout this.
I can do the best I can. I'm probably not the best, but I will give my shot of what I know.
Is this... Are the antagonist and the protagonist always the focal point for the series?
The majority of it, yes.
Okay. Good to know. I wasn't sure if there were other bad guys or whatnot. Okay.
Well, there's other members on each side of the party, but in this film, it takes place before any of the films, takes place before the original cartoon, decades ago. Really, the film was more about, it felt like a clean slate, like saying, hey, we're going to get everybody on the same page. Here's the film, and here's the story and how it all happened.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was quite interesting. I don't know if this is just the director, Josh Cooley, and the writers who put this story together, if this is just their take, or if there's something rooted in like comics that actually tell this story. I don't know where the story came from, but I thought it was super interesting that they were the friends, almost like brothers, super close, and they would get into all sorts of, shenanigans together, like adventures, and they would get angry at each other, and, if we get through this, I'll kill you, kind of,
Right.
Humor, which that's one of the lines from the movie, and I got a good laugh at that because, I think anyone can resonate with that, the frustration.
Yeah, and it's the interesting thing is that this film does a good job portraying the two of them as like besties, and they didn't even know each other beforehand. They were both came in as miners, and in this film, miners is the lower class where they go in and they have to dig out energies for the planet of Cybertron.
That's true, and the thing that I thought was interesting, the only way to be a miner is when you're born, your core, you don't have a core, and we find out later that that's not the case, but that's how it's been portrayed in this on Cybertron, which is the home planet for Transformers.
Right, and the whole thing with, like, if you don't have a core, you can't transform. That was the whole take. So you were segregated in this film, and you were pretty much as a minor to do something.
Lesser in society.
Correct.
Taking care of the garbage or the mining or...
the dirty work.
The dirty work, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So I thought it was really interesting. So this particular cast of... Okay, so let me backtrack slightly. This is actually the first theatrical animated film since 1986. that's a very long time.
Yep.
They use CGI to animate this Transformers movie, but for me personally, I thought it looked like real life.
It was really quite good for its
It
animation.
was even the shine in the shadows on
The lighting effects and everything.
on their the metal
Yep.
on their bodies.
Okay.
You could see the shine, and I was specifically looking for that because I was like, wow, why does this look so real? It looks like you're looking at metal.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not, but it's hard to distinguish. The CGI on this was absolutely outstanding.
Yep. No, they did a great job with how it looked, the feel, um, even like the atmosphere from underground to the surface, where in this film they tackle both those areas. The environment on the surface is completely different and looks more abandoned compared to underground, where the people in Transformers have reside and to live out their day to day lives, and miners digging up obviously energy. Um, and they made the city in underground look like kind of resemble like New York City, and everything was transportation. Everything was
Very developed.
right, and especially for Transformers, who can all transform into some kind of vehicle of something.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and I would say that a large city like New York or any large city really, but it had a little bit of a industrial feel to it, clearly because everything is metal.
Yeah.
So, but it was the visuals on it, even the opening scene when you first start seeing the internal workings of Cybertron inside the planet was just, it was beautiful.
Yep.
There's no other word for it. So, but yeah, this particular movie had a lot of really big names in it, and I went in not knowing who was in it. It was just before we sat down. I'm, as many of you may know, I'm the type of person to go into a movie. I don't want to see the trailer for it. I would rather not know who's in it. Like, I want a fresh look when I go in. So I started hearing the voices and I'm like, oh, who is that? Who is that? Like, I'm sitting here mulling over it in my mind, and it turns out some of these big names that I was hearing the voices for were, these well-known people like Chris Hemsworth, Tyree Henry, Scarlett Johansson, Keegan-Michael Key, Steve Buscemi, and Lawrence Fishburne, John Hamm, and others. Like, these are really big names,
Yep.
and they, in my opinion, did a fabulous job. Like, I have no complaints whatsoever, and even the more main characters and some of the major supporting characters were just, the
Yeah.
acting was great.
Yep. And the thing was they not only did a great job, and their acting was actually quite good. Those who have seen the Transformer films, this is going to be a different cast than the ones you're used to, and that makes sense in this origin film. Takes place again, centuries ago, or who knows how long.
Decades,
Before.
centuries, it's hard to know.
Hard to know, but way before everything has happened that we all know since the cartoon in the good old days. But outside of that, though, the way the story kind of developed, you mostly you're obviously focused on obviously Optimus Prime, Megatron, who really don't use those names for most of the movie. It's Orin Pax and D16. That's what they're called throughout the majority of the film. And along the way, they pick up other characters that you may recognize. Alito 1, for example, which is the name of the robot in this film, or B-127, which we know when you hear B, you think of Bumblebee.
Or Badass Tron.
That's right.
Which is hilarious. That's the nickname he gives himself, which is when he does it, even when it's so much laughing when he does this deep voice. I can't even do it.
No, and then back to these voice actors, they not only capture it quite well. There's a lot of comedy in this film, but there's also some serious notes as well. So some things do get the serious when it does happen, and when there's comedy, it hits it quite well. Especially with Keegan, doing quite a good job on capturing that humor as B-127.
Oh yeah, he was fabulous.
He was the kind of like I wouldn't say the punching bag, but he was
the
more
comic relief of sorts.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, he won't keep his mouth shut, keeps talking. He's the slightly annoying, but friendly. You can't hate him. You have to love him kind of character.
Yeah, and the way he was brought into it and how he met with Orion and D16 was actually quite humorous, actually, too. And then how they ended up...
Orion Pax, yeah.
Yep, Orion Pax. But, along the way that they idolize Sentinel Prime on who he is and how he's just the savior of everybody. And Orion Pax and D16 really look up to him. And, as miners, they were able to get his attention, Sentinel Prime's attention. And, one thing led to another, they're on the surface and they're trying to find out what really happened, during the war.
Yeah, but they weren't specifically looking for that. They were looking for
the Matrix is what they're looking for.
Yeah, they call it the Matrix,
Yep.
which I had a really hard time separating the thing that they call the Matrix from the actual movies. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that can be good. If you're not familiar, if you're not familiar with Transformers, that can see that be confusing. Now, those who don't know, the Matrix is the power source of Cybertron. And because that has been missing forever, that's where the miners had to go in and start digging up energy to help sustain energy and life balance for the civilians on Cybertron. But little they noticed, though, is that when you got to the surface, those who are familiar with Transformers, the squid-like aliens called quintessons has overtaken Cybertron, and there's a lot of things going on that we're not going to jump into it too much. We want to hopefully this is enough to get you guys to go watch this film.
Sentinel Prime, he is hiding that from the
civilians
in Cybertron in the under the surface of the world. And no one really goes outside of the underground. So but they end up trying to go and seek the Matrix. They come to find out the truth, and it turns out that Megatron is very angry.
Oh, yeah.
And Optimus Prime is as well.
But the fun thing is, the interesting thing is they both take it to a different, road to it. Optimus Prime's more like, that's really not fair. We're going to stop this and make things right and rebuild it the right way. Whereas D16, as known as Megatron is, screw this. I want to destroy everything because I was lied.
Yeah, I was lied to. I want revenge. And I'm going to kill him.
Yep. Well, that's exactly what he said in the film. So it's interesting to see how things unfold. How does Megatron become Megatron? And how does Optimus Prime become Optimus Prime? How do the two become enemies? This film does do that. And to see it unfold was actually, pretty fun, actually. And
yeah, you slowly see Megatron, their friendship, starting to slowly have more and more conflict because of their differing views, and you see the red eyes on Megatron, which didn't start out as red, but gradually more and more got redder and redder and longer until he just
snapped.
He snapped, yeah. Yep. So it was really interesting. I really like the depth of the story. For me, I was going into this, I have to say I was not excited to go to this movie, and I didn't even find out that it was animated until getting out of the car, about to go into the movie, and I can tell you I was not happy because I'm
Well, you didn't want to know anything about it, right?
I did not know anything about it, like anything. So
surprise.
yeah, surprise. And when I found out, I was really upset. I was like, really, I'm going to see an animated version of, like, what are they going to be able to do with it? That, how impressive could it be? Like, at least with the CGI in the live action, they can do a lot with it, but it turns out they use CGI for the entire movie, which super impressed, gotta say. But I was not happy going into it when I found out all that.
But your opinion changed quite a bit, so that's a positive thing.
It did. I had really low expectations of this. I was like, okay, this is just going to be a fighting movie throughout the whole thing. Very much like, Dragon Ball Z, which I'm not a fan of. I know I'm going to probably get people who are, like, not too happy about that statement because they're such big fans. But I'm just not a big fan of things that are like fight, like where that's the focal point. And I'm not a huge fan of, like, darker, visually darker animation. I like bright and colorful, like Studio Ghibli, My Neighbor Totoro kind of thing. So stuff that's light and airy and colorful, and this was not that. So for me, I was super impressed to see such a depth with the characters and the storyline. Whereas I expected fighting throughout the whole thing, which, don't get me wrong, there was some fighting, like, clearly, but it wasn't what I would have thought going in.
Right. Now, this movie it's less than 2 hours, an hour 44 minutes, and there's just, when you're trying to go to an origin story, you've got to pretty much, you're trying to describe all these characters, their backstories, how they get from A to Z, and it takes time and a lot of building. And in this film, they did a good job with it. Their main goal was Optimus Prime and Megatron. But I feel like there was just some things that were kind of missing that I felt that I wish they touched a little bit more on, or at least maybe a description. Yeah. So, for example, these quintessons, quintessence. Excuse me. I thought, I was trying to figure out more about them and what was going on. And, it seemed like they were residing on Cybertron.
Residing on.
Yeah. Their ships were flying. They were scanning areas and whatnot. And then, the next thing you know, you don't.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't think that they were residing because they had a big ship there, and it looked like they were coming to visit to get the energy source that they needed, and they didn't necessarily reside there because everything was so open and there wasn't, like, a built-up civilization.
No, I mean, you just
on the surface.
You saw some of that, but it was all decayed and whatnot. But it was just like, why were they scanning the area, as that was going on? But yet still, if they were paying a visit, why scan the area? I just didn't quite get that. Like,
okay.
Like, I felt like there was more to it than meets the eye.
Some missing pieces. I guess for me, I kind of interpreted that as just them trying to find if there's any other people around. Well, not people, but Transformers around that that they might want to, I don't know, do something with. Like, I don't know. Do they kidnap them? Do they eat them? Do they, like, what?
Probably destroy them, I guess. I mean,
or probably destroy. I guess that's something I hadn't considered, and I guess we really don't have answers for that.
No, right. But depending on how well this film does, how does it do in the box office and worldwide? If it does really well, I can see them doing a second film or a sequel that will dive into that more.
Interesting. Okay.
I can see that happening. So that's kind of leaving the doors open, but I kind of wish they just talked a little bit more about it. I understand when they were trying to focus on, their own circle of what was going on with inside Cybertron. But I felt like they could have, maybe touched a little bit more on other things.
Okay, that's really interesting. I hadn't put those pieces together. I felt like it wasn't really an important part of it. I didn't really think about that. Maybe I underthought that.
Hmm.
I don't know. Um, I was just focusing on the other things at like when they were being scanned and how they hid. Like
No,
that was really good.
no, that was
like
no problem with that.
yeah
I
no
just want a little bit more. I mean,
missing some pieces. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
but when you're trying to stuff a lot of origin stories, a lot of story building, you got an hour and 44 minutes ish time, give or take.
They used it really well.
Yes, I wasn't really watching it. I don't think I was really bored at all watching it. Like the beginning was there was slowly building up the beginning, which that was probably the slowest moments, and then after that it was on a good steady pace. And then when things got rough, things got rough. Things got smooth. I mean, it flowed pretty well from right to the end.
That's a really good way to put it. It flowed really well. I would agree with that. I didn't feel like it was slow starting out. For me, it was just a nice pace to, introduce you to the characters and understand some of their relationships with each other and, explaining kind of what the underworld versus the top of the world, the outside world would be. So I thought the pacing on that was good, and then they had a little bit of a race where they were trying to prove themselves as something worthy in their society, and that was a nice fun race. I liked it.
Yeah.
Then it got slow again, and then it picked up. It ebbed and flowed really nicely. I don't have complaints over it. The pacing was really good.
No, and I kind of wonder just the team that built it. You've got Josh Cooley, who's also worked on Toy Story 4, so he's worked with great animation companies like for Pixar. So I think he's got a good understanding how the flow should work, the story building, the building up the characters. And yeah, he did. I think he did a great job
Good
with this
vision.
film.
Yeah, good vision indeed.
Now, regards to let's talk about the soundtrack. Was there anything in the music wise that jumped out? Was it just
okay? So for me, I don't follow music too much. Usually, if something jumps out, it'll be very very obvious for me. But for this, I didn't feel like anything jumped out specifically. However, I would also say that the energy of the music that they chose for this, which admittedly I don't know if it was created specifically for this movie or if it was stuff that was already existing, which to me doesn't matter. I felt like the pacing of it was really good because I did notice some points where it was like higher energy, like during the fights and things like that. I did notice those things. So while it didn't like stand out like something you would recognize, it I feel like it added to the story.
Now I didn't hear any vocal tracks during this.
I don't
mostly
recall.
Orchestrated, from what I can tell. I don't recall. That's why I'm.
Yeah, I don't recall either. I don't think there was.
No.
But yeah, I thought the soundtrack was good. It wasn't anything that stood out like
no, but it did the job. It got the audience engaged. It got to where
I felt like it
the necessary needs.
Yeah, it added to the story by way of if without it, you wouldn't have been in the movie as much. Like you wouldn't feel it as much.
Right, and the music was done by Brian Taylor, who's worked on the animated television series for Transformers Prime in 2010 to 2013. So he has.
Okay, so
he is familiar with the Transformers series. So I think that does help on the engagement and how the music should flow during these scenes.
Yeah, he composed the scores for the Transformers one. No complaints there. I think it added value to it. It wasn't just, it's there, but it added to the energy and the flow of just everything.
And I know just for those who probably just saw the trailer, like, oh, great, they're going to do the Transformers. This one looks more engaged towards kids. Yes, it is towards the kids, new generation, but it was fun to watch.
It was, yeah. Even for someone like me who doesn't like robots and fighting and
just-
all that.
You're just not a big fan of like robots in disguise, are ya?
Robots and I have no opinion other than I would not seek it out. So,
Well,
so
all I
yeah,
can say is this film more than meets the eye. I'll tell you that.
it is, and actually, I should at some point watch the trailer to it to see how it showed everything. So that I think that would be interesting. Well, I'll probably do that after we get off this. Nothing like after the fact, but yeah. I thought this was really good. For me, I didn't see many negatives other than that final fight scene, which I understood I knew it was coming, so it was a little longer than I would have preferred, but it was still engaging enough to keep my attention, where it only crossed my mind like one time, like, oh, this is a long scene, and still don't prefer those kind of stories, but they did it well.
Yeah, there was definitely some moments that you'll see coming, and you'll see it miles away, but there were some moments I thought, oh, I didn't expect that part to happen, or this part. So it was good, actually. It kept me engaged through the film, like I said earlier.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of things I would not have guessed, although I had no point of reference walking in. So it didn't follow the typical pattern of movies because, I mean, it's its own thing. Like, Transformers is its own genre, essentially. So, yeah.
So I'm eager to see how this will do weeks ahead, and if they will greenlight a sequel. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
I guess.
Is it worth going?
Yeah, and I would go to the theater for it, and it's nice to watch it on the big screen because of the CGI. Animation for it. Yeah, the details, you can see them much larger than you would on an at-home television or whatnot. So I would definitely recommend this movie.
Okay. What would you give it?
I'm curious, would you see it again in theaters?
Oh yeah, I would watch it again.
Yeah. So that's good. Where would your final
4.25.
4.25?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time still with the 4.25 or 4.5 because I'll probably land on...
What does your heart say? What does your core say?
Oh, I'm so torn between 4.25 and 4.5 still. Like, there were a lot of aspects that I hadn't considered
There was a lot more positives than there was negatives.
Way more positives.
Well, there's your answer. It sounds like 4.5 to me.
Yeah. I'll go with 4.5 on this one. I usually find some more negatives, but in this case, when we were talking...
No, it did the job. It's exactly what it says it is.
Yeah, the negatives don't take away from the story.
No.
Or the
hiccups. That's all I saw.
Yeah, the entertainment of it. So yeah, I would give it a 4.5.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right. So there you have it, folks.
Well, those who want to watch it, it's going to come out September 20th. So not too far from now.
Yeah, September 20th, 2004. Put it on your calendars because it's going to be a good one for you.
That's right.
So thank you so much for stopping by and listening to the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
That's right.